The executive branch of the U.S. federal government is one of three branches. We have the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch. The executive gives the most familiar face to it because the executive branch is the office of the president. Now, where does the president live?
In the White House.
The president lives in the White House, and which is a very familiar icon, which looks something like that. We'll go ahead and label it. White House. And so you have this is the U.S. president, and underneath him would be the vice president. And then there are some appointments that the president gets to make. And there's a number of these. And what are these? What's the body of these appointments called? Where you have like the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense. What are these called?
The cabinet.
These are the cabinet positions. And there are 15 different departments, ranging from Department of State, which is one of the oldest and most respected, all the way down to Department of Homeland Security, which is a more recent creation. And there are other officers that are appointed by the U.S. President that are at a cabinet level but are not considered to be one of the 15 departments that you typically think of with your cabinet officers. Now, the president is a very powerful position. It was the presidency was created, and our system of government was created with the U.S. Constitution in 1787. And we had George Washington, who was our commander-in-chief at the time. And so when the Constitution was written, it was crafted where a man like George Washington, a very popular, powerful figure, would be in that office. And so the powers that were invested in the office were kind of tailor-made to someone like him. And so as a result, the United States has a very powerful presidency as compared to some other countries. What are some of the powers that the president has? I'd like to just listen.
Leader of the military?
He's the leader of our armed forces. He's our commander-in-chief. And he's the guy that the generals ultimately report to, and he makes a lot of the decisions about our armed forces and how they're going to be deployed. And our Joint Chiefs of Staff, they look to the President for their marching orders. While Congress declares war, the President is the one that takes us to war and leads our troops. What else? What are some other responsibilities?
He listens to Congress?
When the bills come from Congress, Congress is responsible for making the laws. And so they have to get through the Senate, they have to get through the House of Representatives, but then they come before the President, and the President has the right to either sign them into law or to veto them. And this is part of the balance of powers, where Congress is very powerful, they can make the laws, but the President can veto them if he doesn't like them. Now, then it goes back to Congress, and Congress can overturn the President's veto with a 2/3 vote, but that's often very difficult for them to achieve. And so the President has veto power over a lot of legislation that comes through. The President usually doesn't do it that often, but it is a very powerful tool in the tool belt to use, and you can help influence Congress to pass certain legislation. You can threaten them not to pass other legislation, and by the threat of the veto. What else?
Spending?
Spending. Through the cabinet positions, the budget is set by Congress, but the President has a lot of influence in that process, and through the cabinets, a lot of money goes into the cabinets, positions and departments, and gets spent through there. And so there is some involvement with spending through the presidency. What else?
Can he declare states of emergency, like storms? Or?
Yes. Whenever there's a hurricane or a tornado or some other natural disaster that moves to the area, the President can authorize FEMA and emergency response to go to that area to pour in relief funds and help out. So help declaring states of emergencies. What else?
Makes executive agreements?
Yes. part of Congress's responsibilities is to approve treaties, but the president is the one that makes the initial negotiations. When you think about it, a foreign power, we're dealing with a foreign power as the United States. The president is the one that sits down across the table from a foreign leader and tries to hammer out the details of this is what our treaty should be. Then he has to bring that treaty back and get it approved by Congress. And so again, we see the balance of powers, how each is involved in different processes to contribute to a positive result. What else?
Appoints people to different branches?
Appointments. A lot of federal judges are appointed by the current president. And as judges, either they die or they retire, and the U.S. president is the one that makes those appointments. And it's not just at the Supreme Court level, it's at other levels of the judiciary, it's through the cabinet departments. The president has a huge impact with appointments. Now again, this power is tempered through the through the legislative branch, which has the authority to deny some of the appointments. And so you can sometimes see a conflict between Congress and the president, where the president wants to appoint a certain person, but Congress says, no, you can't, come to us with a different name. What else?
Doesn't he grant pardons to criminals?
Pardons. This is a controversial use of presidential power at times, but as a way for the executive branch to have a check to the power of the judiciary. If someone is sentenced for a crime and the president feels that they didn't get proper treatment or something should be done, the president is a measure of last resort and can step in and can issue a pardon to a person that absolves them of the crime and can free them of their sentence. And so, but a lot of times people may feel that that was unwisely used, and so that's why it can be a controversial power. But as you can see, there are a lot of things. Usually we see the president on TV and we may not be sure exactly what he does, but he has a lot of different responsibilities. It's a very powerful position, and the president is the head of the executive branch.